All right, good morning, YouTubes. We are in Romans 12, page 1101 in the scriptures. If you don't have a scriptures, it's a book that looks like this. You can shoot us an email if you need one but can't afford it. And if you need one but can afford it, you can get them at isr-messianic.org, India Sierra Romeo.messianic.org. And or you can get them at our website forOurCostBearIndependent.com. And truly, if you cannot afford one, just email me, ntxmag@gmail, and we'll send you one. And shout out to everybody who continuously swamps us with scriptures. There's a few people out there that I guess they see it as a tithe. Once per month, they just send a case of scriptures. And they're you're awesome. So, and when we started doing this, I was like, I got to get a case of scriptures. And I was like, honey, how much is a case of scriptures? She's like, it's $214 and change. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. And I was like, all right, yeah, I will buy a case of scriptures, but I don't have $214. You got to make a way. He's like, all right. Next day, wake up, check my PayPal. Somebody had PayPal'd me $215. And the comment on it was, I don't know why I'm doing this, but you know what to do with it. And our most recent reorder of scriptures was 720. So it started with a case of 20, and the most recent order was 720. So praise Yah. And the number one thing that moves through Bear Independent on the store is scriptures at cost. It's not bare facts, it's not patches, it's not stickers, it's scriptures. So
I ordered 2 a couple months ago and gave them both to coworkers.
Bless you. So, and if you have one or you need one but don't have it and you're here, there's a case right there, please take one. And if there's somebody that you know that needs one, please take one. That's why they're there, okay? So, page 1101 in the scriptures, we are dealing with Shaul of Tarsus. The Apostle Paul was just talking with Brother Ryan here about how some people would like to say that Paul would say that the law has been done away with. And what I was telling Ryan is, I have gotten to the point in my life now where I don't let people quote Paul at me unless they have read the entirety of the Old Testament and are doing it. Because Paul read the entirety of the Old Testament. It was his job. He was a lawyer of the Torah. He lived it. He did it every day. He confessed under penalty of death at trial in the book of Acts that he believed firmly in the Elohim of his fathers and the Torah and the prophets, having an expectation of the resurrection. The Torah, the prophets, the resurrection. That's what Shaul said under the penalty of death. He judged people per the Torah. He taught people the Torah, and he never one time said that this law was done away with. Never, not once. And so anybody who likes to take the words of Paul and cherry pick them and spin them into this little thing that they call their own personal faith and then lob that at people like hand grenades, I have no time for, because it's false doctrine. The enemy is a liar and the father of it. So we're going to read the words of Paul, understanding that he is writing to Gentile believers in Yeshua in Rome. That's the epistle of Romans. That's who it's written to, okay? And the foundational argument that's being addressed in this epistle to the Romans, the Gentile believers in Yeshua, is the argument by the Yehudim, the Jews who are already there, one of 12 tribes who are already there, saying that, hey, we are justified by our bloodline because we're Jews, we are of Israel. Y'all need to do Jewish stuff. If you're going to be a believer, you need to do the Jewish stuff. And Shaul is saying, nah, you need to do Messiah stuff. And there's some overlap between Messiah stuff and Jewish stuff, but they're not one and the same. This is an issue that we run into all the time. People go, what, are you Jewish? No. But you do Jewish things. No, I do biblical things. And some Jewish things are biblical. Some Christian things are biblical. I'm not a contemporary Christian because most of Christianity is Babylonian heathenism these days. I'm not a Jew because most of Judaism is Babylonian heathenism these days. I just read the Bible, as Mad Kelp would say, read the book, do what it says. And that is what Shaul is encouraging these brothers in Rome to do. You have this witness of Yeshua, read the book, do what it says. Okay? So it only took us 5 minutes to come to that foundation, but it's important because, again, when you cherry pick things out of context, it's easy. I could lob them at you like a weapon and completely destroy your own personal faith because I have a misunderstanding. That's no bueno. Okay? So, 12, Shaul. I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. So, your body's a living offering. Remember, does anybody remember what the 4 directives plus the 1 directive were to the Gentile believers in Messiah in Acts chapter 15? They're arguing about circumcision, and they say, we got all these guys over here. And they're like, they totally believe in Messiah. What do we do with them? Because they're heathens. Anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Whoring. Abstain from whoring. Abstain from idolatry. No strangulation. No blood. And then go to the temple on the Sabbath and hear the words of Moshe. Acts chapter 15, verses 15 through 19. In the New Testament. And what is Acts? Acts is Luke documenting what, was it Luke or Timothy? Luke documenting what Paul was doing to be used in his court trial when he gets to Rome in the first place. It was a witness of what Paul said. So Paul didn't say that. But anyway, point being, hey, don't do heathen stuff. These are people who are so heathenistic that we have to remind them, hey, maybe not some giant wild orgies, okay? Don't do blood things. Let's not kill things by strangling them to feel the life force go out of them. And don't be worshiping false idols. Let's handle all of that before you get a circumcision. And then go to the temple on the Sabbath and hear the words of Moshe. So this whole idea of present your body as a living offering. Okay? These people that he's talking to are they've already been well indoctrinated with the idea of bringing offerings. That the offerings in the form of worship that they already have is skewed. They had to be reminded not to play with blood. Okay? These are the types of people that we're dealing with. So this body that you're living offering, this belongs to Elohim. Give it to Elohim. Right? And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Anybody tracking on the renewed covenant? What do we got to do under the renewed covenant? Have his laws where? And in our mind, right? And be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what it is that is good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. For I say through the favor, the grace, which has been given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he should think, but to think soberly, as Elohim has given to each a measure of belief. For as we have many members in one body, but all members do not have the same function, so we, the many, are one body in Messiah, and members each one of another. This is basic stuff here. Kidneys will never be hearts, hearts will never be lungs, armpits will never be toes. But we need all of those things so that we can function as a body, right? Now, having different gifts according to the favor which was given to us, let us use them accordingly. If prophecy, according to the proportion of belief. If serving, in the serving, or he who is teaching, in the teaching, or he who encourages, in the encouragement, or he who is sharing, in sincerity. He who is leading, in diligence, he who shows compassion, joyously. Let love be without hypocrisy. Shrink from what is wicked, cling to what is good. In brotherly love, tenderly loving towards one another, in appreciation, giving preference to each other. Not idle in duty, ardent in spirit, serving the master. Rejoicing in the expectancy, enduring under pressure, continuing steadfastly in prayer. imparting to the needs of the set apart ones, pursuing kindness towards strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. This is a foreshadowing right here of understanding that, again, the crux of the issue are these Yehudim who are telling these Roman believers in Messiah that they need to be conformed to the Jewish stuff, okay? Because when we get to 13, which we will, chapter 13, talking about, what does it say? Let every being be in subjecting to the governing authorities, which has been completely taken out of context. It's understanding that, yes, they are, well, I don't want to jump the gun here, but that's foreshadowing there. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse, okay? Which is actually backed up by everything else that Paul says in Rome. He's like, look, you heathens should be thankful that the Jews came and totally messed up the law, because if they didn't, we wouldn't have a Messiah. And if we didn't have a Messiah, then the gospel would not have gone out to all nations, and then you wouldn't be saved. So bless and do not curse those who persecute you. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind towards one another. Do not be proud in mind, but go along with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Repay no evil for evil. Respect what is right in the sight of all men. If possible, on your part, be at peace with all men. Beloved, do not revenge yourselves, but give place to the wrath. For it has been written, vengeance is mine, I shall repay, says Yahweh. Who's got James 1, 19 and 20? Whoever's got it first, just go with it.
You believe that Elohim is one. You do well. Sorry, that's two.
James 1, 19 and 20.
On it. So then, my beloved brothers, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Elohim.
I need that tattooed on my forehead.
I needed
In reverse, so I can see it every time I look in the mirror. Yeah. Well, there's the Torah for that. Maybe a Sharpie.
Write it every morning.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe just like a nice embroidered headband or something. Wrath, I've said it before, anger is one of my superpowers. And I need to be careful not to go there, because the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Elohim. They are diametrically opposed from one another. And you'll see, I have seen many people use that to support the extra biblical standpoint that Yeshua was a sopping wet P word. And he was not. So we're sitting in here with a bunch of tables, right? Imagine this was the temple, and Yeshua comes walking in here, and we're buying and selling. Today's the Sabbath, right? And we're buying and selling, and we're carrying on, and we're not being righteous. And he starts picking these tables up and throwing them across the room and grabbing people by the throats and dragging them out and tossing them into the parking lot. And he's got a whip, and he is beating our asses with this whip. That is not a sopping wet P word. And that is but there's a difference there between that righteous anger and the wrath of man. The wrath of man you cannot have the righteousness of Elohim and the wrath of man coexisting. Versus, literally, there's people in the temple going, see, there's this prophecy, David said that the Messiah would be ardent for the house of his father. And look, this guy's throwing people across the room. He's pretty ardent, right? So, ardent, good, wrath, bad.
Okay. Now Dudley will give us a demonstration.
And now...
Nobody's selling anything.
All right. Beloved, do not revenge yourselves, but give place to the wrath. For it has been written, vengeance is mine, I shall repay, says Yahweh. Instead, if your enemy hungers, feed him. If he thirsts, give him drink. For in doing so, you shall heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And then 13. let every being be in subjection to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from Elohim, and the authorities that exist are appointed by Elohim. So he who opposes the authority withstands the institution of Elohim, and those who withstand shall bring judgment on themselves. Pause there. We recently got this on a live stream. Hey Bear, my boss says that I have to wear a mask at work because the government said that I have to wear it. And he said, well, if you're a Christian, you should understand per Romans 13 that you have to be in subjection to the governing authorities. I was kind of pissed at that question. In context, the authorities here, first of all, if you look in verse 2, so he who opposes the authority withstands the institution of Elohim. Is there anybody here in this room who thinks what's happening in Washington, D.C. is the institution of Elohim?
No.
Depends on how you look at it. There's that part where it says, and he will turn you over to the desires of your heart, and you can destroy yourself.
Elohim is not instituted in D.C. He's not instituted at our state capitals. His institution is not manly, worldly government. In fact, in the frame of mind, literally, these are the same people who would make this Romans 13 argument who go, well, very clearly that 666, the number of a man, was Nero. So literally, Satan is the Roman government, but we should be subjected to him. Negative. It's bad teaching. It's bad doctrine. The early Messianic church, and make no mistake, for the first 200 years of its existence, followers of Messiah were Jews who had found their Messiah. So much so that somewhere around 200 years after Yeshua died, there were so many believers in Messiah that were, in Jewish terms, polluting the temple, that they have 18 prayers that they would say at the opening of each temple ceremony. They added a 19th. And the 19th was a rejection of Yeshua. It's still said in temple today. And so if I thought that Charles was a believer in Messiah, I'd say, hey, Charles, why don't you come up here and do the prayer? And you were put in a position where you had to do one of two things. Either publicly renounce your belief in Yeshua, or not do the prayer and be outed and be thrown out of the synagogue. And that's where you start to get the divide around 200 AD between Christianity and Judaism, which is then, like Brother Richard talked about, the Council of Nicaea, 312, 328, and then it spirals out of control from there. But for the first 200 years, there was no Christianity. There were Jewish believers in Messiah. They understood quite well the subjection to the governing authorities was the government of the synagogue. It was the structure of the Yehudim, is what this is being discussed in context. And so what Paul is saying here is, yes, you are Roman believers in Yeshua. And there's these Jews who are saying, you got to do the Jewish stuff. And they're out of line with all this Jewish stuff. That's what Yeshua railed against in the first place. Okay? It's like, you guys are doing doctrines of men, not doctrines of Yah. You're not doing what Yah said to do. Or if you are, you're not doing it completely, but you've heaped all this other stuff on top of what Yah said to do. Balanced by, again, what do we see in Acts 15? Go to the temple on the Sabbath and hear the words of Moses. So there is some good that is happening there. Yeshua himself was in the temple on the Sabbath preaching the word that he had, which was the scriptures, the Old Testament, before that one blank page. Right, that little, yeah. All that stuff, the 80% of the word before that one blank page is what they had as their scriptures, and that's what Yeshua was teaching people. In fact, when you read in the Gospels, what's he reading? He's reading Isaiah. Where's Isaiah? Is it in the New Testament? No, the New Testament didn't exist yet. Okay, so they taught each other with the Old Testament. And I don't mean to harp on that, but the point here is in 13, the idea that The governing authorities is a worldly government is contextually inaccurate at best and an outright lie at worst. It's being used to kowtow men of today's day and age to do things that Yah never told them to do in the first place. The governing authority is that of the Yehudim in context of the synagogic government, the rulers that the Roman believers in Yeshua were having to deal with. You can't have it both ways. If Nero was potentially Satan himself, and if the church was being persecuted by the Romans, why do we subject ourselves to their authority? We don't. That's bad doctrine. Is everybody tracking on that? Does that make sense? Okay. It's a lot to unpack. And that's why when people try and cherry pick Paul and throw Paul at people like hand grenades, I get pissed. Because sometimes it takes a 5 to 10 minute explanation to get deep on 2 verses so that it makes sense. What do you got, Phelps?
This authority also, because it says there is no authority except from Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
I see this kind of also in more of a overall, we're told to do blessings to those who do evil towards us, right? And it said it right there. If your enemy is hungry, feed him, That goes so contrary to man's way of thinking. But that's the authority or the law that Yah has implemented. Do this and you shall be blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Follow these commands and you shall have blessing and life.
Mm-hmm.
But it can seem contrary sometimes. It's like, well, if I do this, it shouldn't turn out that way. But he's made the rules, so it will.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see this as talking, like you're saying, obviously, I don't see it as talking about a governing body as much as it is like referring to the authority of gravity to keep us sitting in our chairs. Which was established by Yah. And if you oppose that authority, what does it say? If you don't follow the commands, you're dead. And it goes on, you're about to get to it, but it goes on into 3, talking about the rulers are objects of fear. That directly ties it into a governing body that is not established by Yah.
Correct. There is no authority but what comes from Yah.
Right.
And to think that the institutions of men establish Yah, I don't.
They establish fear.
Turn on
They establish
CNN.
evil.
Turn just MSNBC. Yes, sir.
Didn't God show us in Daniel how to handle earthly authority with Daniel himself before the lion's den? They said, this is the rule, you can't pray to anybody else, and Daniel went and did what he was going to do anyway.
Yep.
And they said, okay, we're going to kill you, and Daniel said, so be it.
Bring it.
And same with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. When they went and everybody stand in the public square, and when we blow it, everybody kneels down and bows down to the big brass idol. And no.
Yep.
There may be a time when God calls you to disobey some rule from the authority and back it with your life.
This is exactly what we saw earlier in 1 Samuel 15. Just because the worldly leader says to do something doesn't mean that you're supposed to do it. Because if he's not in line with what Yah says, it's wrong.
But at the same time, he used both of those examples where they stood up to the earthly leader to show the earthly leader who God really is.
Yep. That's exact. They created a witness, created a testimony through
Right.
their belief. Right. And so the idea that we just bend over to worldly authority is not biblical. And you're establishing that. You're establishing that. It's all throughout this word, and that's not what Romans 13 means. And we've camped on that for 15 minutes already. So, but no, it's okay. It's good. I just want to make sure that it's understood that if anybody makes that argument to you, they're being disingenuous at best and outright lying at worst. All right, so we'll start again in 13. Let every being be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from Elohim, and the authorities that exist are appointed by Elohim, not the worldly authorities. So he who opposes the authority withstands the institution of Elohim, and those who withstand shall bring judgment on themselves. Remember that the Yehudim were the keeper of the Torahs. They were the children of promise. And Shaul goes elsewhere in Rome, goes way deep on that. Without them, the Gentiles would have never had the deliverance of Messiah. Right? So bring judgment on themselves. Those who withstand shall bring judgment on themselves. For those ruling are an object of fear, not to good works, but to evil. Do you wish to not be afraid of the authority? Do you wish to not be afraid of the authority? Do the good, and you shall have praise from it. For it is a servant of Elohim to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword in vain. For it is a servant of Elohim, a revenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. You're afraid of the authority? Do the right thing. You don't have to worry about it. Do the wrong thing, you're going to find out just how sharp that sword is. Boy, that's a biblical concept, right? We just saw that in 1 Samuel. Perfect, yeah. Therefore, it is necessary to be subject not only because of wrath, but also because of conscience. For because of this you also pay taxes, for they are servants of Elohim attending continually to these duties. Render therefore to all what is due to them, tax to whom tax is due, toll to whom toll, fear to whom fear, respect to whom respect. So many would say, well, see, yeah, you just pay your taxes, pay your tolls, be subject to authority. What he's saying here is, in my opinion, you're quite, I wouldn't say I'm happy, but I willingly pay my taxes because I understand the ramifications if I don't, right? Men with guns will show up and take me to jail. And I will probably be there a while because I'm a domestic terrorist or whatever, right? Some trumped up charges will happen. It's fine. I'll double tap myself on the back of the head in a jail cell. It's whatever. Anyway, so he's saying if you understand how the world works, you ought to understand how, right here, he who opposes the authority withstands the institutions of Elohim. This law that you have, you understand the cost-benefit analysis of paying your taxes and not paying your taxes. Why do you not understand the cost-benefit analysis of heeding the word or transgressing the word? Right? Do you want the blessing or do you want to find out how sharp the sword is? Just as you easily pay your taxes, you should just as easily understand the authority within this word. Owe no one any matter except to love one another, for he who loves another has filled the Torah. Amen. What does Matthew 5:17 say? What does Yeshua say? Anybody? Who's got Matthew 5:17?
Is that the verse you're talking about?
Nope. But that's a good one. I like it. Matthew 5:17 and 18.
Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete.
18. Send. Give me 18 too.
For truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done.
Roger that. So Yeshua himself says, hey, I didn't come to destroy this stuff, but to complete it. And I would submit that the completion of, through Yeshua, is the heart condition. Because the Torah is an external thing. Hey, I'm not supposed to murder you, right? That's Torah. But per Yeshua, I'm not supposed to walk around thinking about murdering you. And if I call you an idiot, I've already murdered you with my mouth. That's a completely different thing, isn't it? Right? Torah says, hey, don't go bang that lady over there. That's adultery. Yeshua says, if you look at her with lust in your eyes, you've already committed adultery. The Torah is an external thing. And we understand the cost-benefit analysis of transgressing that Torah. What Yeshua does is complete it by getting our heart condition right, by having our laws in our mind and written his laws in our mind and written on our hearts. Hebrews 8. And then he will be our Elohim and we will be his people. Because it is now complete. Because the external is backed up by the appropriate internal heart condition. That we don't want to transgress the Torah. It's not simply that we don't transgress the Torah. Hey, I didn't kill JT. Give me a gold star. It's like, no, I shouldn't want to kill him. He is my brother, right? And I don't need to be walking around thinking about, I'm going to push him off of the dock. It's really cold out there. If he doesn't drown, he'll at least die of hypothermia, right? Like, bad heart condition, right? So he comes not to destroy the Torah or prophets, but to complete it. The complete antithesis of destruction is to complete it, to bring it full circle. It is not just an external thing now, it's an internal thing. That our heart condition is squared away because of our walk with Yeshua. Who's got Matthew 22, verses 34 through 40? Matt 22.
What verse?
34 through 40.
I got it. But the Pharisees, having heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, were gathered together. And one of them, one learned in the Torah, did question, trying him and saying, Teacher, which is the great command in Torah? And Yeshua said to him, You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind. This is the first and great command. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commands hang all the Torah and the prophets.
Amen. So, the two great commands. Love Yah with everything you got. Love your neighbor as yourself. And you'll hear, you may or may not hear, because I don't know what your life looks like. I have heard many times modern day Christianity say, there's only two things I got to do per my Jesus. Love God and love my neighbor. Newsflash, we don't get to decide what that looks like. I didn't push JT in the lake. I guess I'm loving my neighbor. No, my heart condition is wrong because I've been thinking about pushing him in the lake all day. By the way, I'm not going to push you in the lake. Or am I?
Cheap insurance.
So, and I've talked about this before, but I'll briefly talk about it again, okay? From the one, from Yah, we have Yeshua, right? Like Richard talked about last night, like a candle lights another candle. It takes nothing from the first candle to light that second candle. So from the one, we get Yeshua. We have the two directives, prime directives. Love Yah with everything you've got. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those two inform the 10 commands. Half of those commands are up, down. They're between us and Yah. How we love him with everything we've got, right? Have no other names before me. Don't put my name on your bull crap. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, which is a gift to us, like we just talked about last night, but is a remembrance, a covenant between us and him, right? Up, down commands. The other half are left, right commands. Don't murder, don't steal, don't be an adulterer, basic stuff, right? Don't bear false witness. Those are the left, rights. Easy. If you need further detail, click here for more help. You have the 613. And you get people who go, there's no way you can keep 613 laws. No shit. That's what we have a Messiah for. You're absolutely right. But it doesn't mean we don't try. Right? And so the 613 are the fine details, the minutia on the 10. So you have the 613, which are informed by the 10. Those 10 are summed up in the two prime directives. Love Yah with everything you have, and love your neighbor as yourself. And we don't get to choose what that looks like. He tells us what that looks like in the 10 and the 613. And those two come from the one. They come straight from Yah. Like we talked about yesterday, before the law was ever written down, righteousness was understood. Noah knew which animals were clean Before it was ever written down, before Leviticus 11 ever existed, he knew which animals to take 7 pairs of and which animals to take 2 of, right? And there's 100 other examples of that in the Old Testament. So, everybody tracking on that? Okay. So verse 8, owe no one any matter except to love one another, for he who loves another has filled the Torah. For this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. That's the 5 love your neighbor as yourself commands right there, right? And if there's any other command, it is summed up in this word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, which people love to think is a New Testament idea. That's from Wa'ikra 19, verse 18. Yeah. So, Leviticus 19, verse 18. Love does no evil to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the completion of the Torah. And that in of itself is a mind-numbingly awesome statement. Because if you think Yeshua came to complete the Torah, what's John 3:16?
For God so loved the world.
Love the world. Love came to complete the Torah. That's freaking awesome. And that he would do that for us. Hell, I don't know y'all that well. That he would do that for me is incredible. Right? He's looking down at us going, yeah, that one's worth saving. Send it. Oof, dude. Love does no evil to a neighbor. Therefore, love is completion of the Torah. And do this, knowing the time that it is already the hour for us to wake up from sleep. For now our deliverance is nearer than when we did believe. Time is drawing near, is what he's saying. And don't tarry to do this. The night is far advanced, the day has come near, so let us put off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. And Eric's going to be talking about Ephesians 6 and the whole armor of Yah this weekend as well. Let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk becomingly as in the day, not in wild parties and drunkenness. Remember what we had to talk about in Acts? Hey, y'all, don't be doing heathen stuff. Not in wild parties and drunkenness, not in living together and indecencies, not in fighting and envy, but put on the Master Yeshua Messiah and make no provisions for the lusts of the flesh. Amen. And that's Romans 12 and 13. Bless y'all, YouTube. Shalom.